What's up, YouTube? I hope all of you are having a happy new year. We are getting the engine out of the 240. All right, now that we got those 3 bolts out, we can pull the ECU out more, and let's get this one off. It looks like a 10 also. And from here we can, with one hand, pull out the ECU wiring. Guess we need to get this loosened up and get this off so we can take out the ECU and put that aside. Probably maybe try to sell it to somebody. Okay, we get this slid off. Just stick a screwdriver in there and this slides right off. Now we got the ECU off. And then down here, it's gonna be hard to see. Let me get a flashlight. All right, now that we got some light, we'll take this, we'll pull this down, and that will allow us to pull this plug out. Might need 2 hands, so hold on. It might take a little bit of work, but you'll be able to pop this and then move this all the way down, and then it'll unplug. Let's see what else is connected. I can see this relay here is also, this one here is also connected to this wiring, so I unscrewed this with a 10 and slide this out, and then get this this relay disconnected. All right, I'm not 100% sure, but I think that that's all that needs to be disconnected. I'm going to wiggle this grommet and start pulling. All right, there's a little more going on. I think I'm gonna have to pull the dash, and I might want to pull the dash anyways because I want to try to pull out the whole carpet and clean the carpet before I put it back in. So I'm gonna pause on this wiring, and I'm gonna try over here and see what we could do with the power steering and the AC. Over here on the power steering, because I don't want to take the pump off of the engine, I'm going to leave that on. I'm going to take the actual feed hose, and it's a 24. I'm just going to snap it off and then put my tray underneath to catch all the excess fluid. 24 down on here. And got the breaker bar. Nice and easy with the breaker bar. All right, after taking off the power steering from here, I went ahead and took off both hoses from the feed and return just to clear up some more space. All right, I'm videoing where the AC is, so I can remember kind of where, you know, what I might have to do when I get the LS in. All right, so I have those down there. Those are attached to the compressor. That one goes around to the back of the engine, all the way around. So we have AC here, kind of gunked up. This was the purge tank or something. And we have it go down, along, and then into there. Okay, and then of course the heater lines are right there behind the engine. All right, I'm gonna take off this vacuum line, goes to the brake booster, and get this bracket off and get it out of the way. That way I have a little more space, And I'm going to go ahead and disconnect the heater hoses from the firewall instead of just the engine, just to get a little more out of the way. Alright, clearing that out of the way gives me a lot easier access to getting the heater hoses off. Okay, I got the heater hoses off at the firewall, and they're kind of being held on by this bracket. I think this bracket will just be something else to get in the way when I'm pulling it, so I'm going to go ahead and take it off. Alright, and since the alternator is right here, I had to put a S14 alternator on. Well, I found an S14 one. The guy gave it to me. It was really excellent price because the 14 one basically was no good. And he got this to work, and it was a tight squeeze. This plug on top is basically in a different location on the 14, but was still able to get it to work. But let's get this off. We got the plug, the positive, and then there should be a negative on the other side. We'll get all those off. It was a tight fit, but 10 millimeter gets the positive, and then right over there where you can see that bolt right next to the wire, that screw right there is the negative, and then the plug. So alternator's off. Let's get this plug off right underneath the oil filter. All right, so if you have AC, after you get someone to come out and take out the Freon and dispose of it, you can go ahead and unbolt all your AC bits, but probably being a 240, most of you don't have AC. I plan to keep AC, or to get AC after I get the swap running. So I'm going to hold on to as many AC pieces as I can, and then see what I can do about getting AC later on. All right, let's get some of these AC bits out. All right, the AC bolts down there on the compressor were 12s, and then I have one that's mounted on the firewall, that was a 10, and that will get this big one up here. That'll get this big one kind of worked on the way out. You come over to the other side, and you see it follow it down, and then it goes into that big one right there. Get that one big one off, and you can lift that one right out. All right, come to think about it, it is about time that I went ahead and jacked this up. I can't get to the starter wire from here, so I'm going to try to get from underneath, and then that will prep me to be able to get the drive shaft off, get all the transmission plugs, and then unbolt the tranny and stuff like that. All right, now that the car is lifted up, we could work on some of the stuff underneath the car. The first thing I'm going to do is drain the transmission. There we go. I'm gonna drain the transmission oil. You just get your 1/2 inch up in here and drain it out. Okay, while that's finished dripping, all of the speed sensor, reverse lockout, all that stuff that's attached to the transmission, wiring wise, you want to go ahead and get that out as well. And then you could just unbolt the slave cylinder and just have it hang, and that should be fine. All right, so you have the wire here, or the connector here. There's one more connector, hard to see up top. Then you have the connector there, and one more. And then over on this side, that connector there. All right, the simple answer to know when you have, you know, the transmission harness, everything unplugged, is when it goes all the way dangling, all the way up to the front of the car. All right, to take the slave cylinder off, get your 14, and if they're on pretty hard, just use your hammer and knock them off. And we'll just leave the slave cylinder hanging, because we're going to end up taking obviously the whole master cylinder and stuff like that off for the swap. But just to get the engine and trans out, we'll just leave this dangling. All right, well, as normal, put back your bolts. Because we're going to be swapping on the T56, on the driver's side is where the feed and the return go. All these additional clutch lines we're not going to need, so we'll be able to take all these out, but we'll do that after I get the engine and trans off. All right, well, now we need to get to the starter. All these wires, you just only checking all these wires to make sure that you got them all disconnected, and that way you know that when you pull it out, it'll come out without snagging anything. As you can see, this is the starter, and this black, where's it at? This black right here is the other cord. I already got the first cord, or the connector, off. Now I need to get this harness part. It's behind here, so let's work on getting that. We'll reach up here with a 12. See if a 12 will fit. 12 seems like it fits. I need to find my wrench. Hard to get it on here. I can't really. There we go. It's pretty tight space. But there we go. And got the starter off, or the wire for the starter off. And as always, putting back our bolt, this time our nut. Okay, let's see what else we need for wiring. I think that might be all the wiring we need. And we already got the alternator, we got the power steering, got the starter, got the trans. Yep, I think that's about it. All right, after looking all through the wiring, I think I have all the wiring off. So now, need to get the drive shaft off. I'm gonna work on getting the drive shaft from the differential first. And this should just be 14. All right, we'll make sure we go the right direction. And loosening it and not tightening. There's one. There's two. And then we'll lift this up and spin it around and get all four. All right, with those 4 bolts off, we'll come up here to the carrier bearing, and there are 2 17 on either side. I also noticed where the drive shaft goes into the transmission is leaking, so maybe the seal there needs to be replaced. But I'm going to put a pan underneath this, because once we get these two off, you should be able to just pull the drive shaft out of the transmission. I started and I got the carrier bearing bolts loosened up, but I also have this bracing that goes across here, and that is, I believe, 3 12 millimeters. Be too much of a pain, so just take this off and then you should be able to drop it right off. All right, I have the 2 carrier bolts off, and the drive shaft is resting on this little arm, but they are almost all the way out. I just didn't want to let it just dangle really hard. So you got the drive shaft. Then I'm gonna just take this bracing off. I help use that to support it, and then just slide it out of the drive shaft, or out of the transmission, and it comes nice and easy. All right, and there's the drive shaft. All right, now that the drive shaft's out, I need to get the exhaust off. Once I get the exhaust off, I think the only thing left after that is the trans mount and engine mounts. All right, well, let's try to get this exhaust off. I don't know if I'm gonna have to cut it or what, but one way or another, it's coming off. All right, I got some 10 millimeters, and I pulled off the heat shield, and we need to get down to get access to these bolts here. That way we can leave on the manifold, we could chain it up from here and then drop it from the down pipe. All right, if you still have the stock exhaust, you'll have a couple bolts here that are attached to the transmission mount. You'll have a ground, or the ground here that you need to take off, and then a couple hangers. So let's get these things off. I had these bolts down on the bottom. There's 2 that are on top, the nuts, and then 1 underneath. I had these soaked in some PB Blaster, and let's see if we could get them off with that. Okay, PB Blaster did an amazing job. Such a good product. I was able to get the bolts off. That thing just fell right on down. Got that bracket, so now all I need to do is get the couple hangers. Get this hanger here, and then 1 more in the back, and then just pull off the entire exhaust. All right, with those bolts out, this should pull right on out. There we go. It's pretty nasty. And down here, there is another seal, and I think a lot of people miss this seal and they don't run it. This is a seal that keeps all the oil from spilling out over. When I first got this car, this seal was cracked and it was spitting oil all down here, and it was running all down the side of my this out of the trans tunnel. If you don't have one of these, or if it's, you know, check it, make sure, you know, it's still good. If it's, you know, not good, get it replaced. It's easy. We're gonna just lift up, pull on the seal, and that will let us try to get access to this snap ring inside here. All right, that was a real pain, but yeah, there's a snap ring, there's a C clamp, and you gotta squeeze it together, pull it out, and then the shifter just lifts right out. All right, well, shifter down, now transmission mounts. All right, from here on out, I am going to have the jack holding up the transmission. We have 4 17mm bolts, 2 on each side, and then we have 2 12mm bolts to take it off from the transmission. So this is on the body. So I can get the body off, and then I'm going to get the transmission cross member off of the transmission. That way when I'm pulling it out, it's not swinging and hitting stuff. All right, the last thing I need to get are the 2 motor mounts. All right, the passenger side is a little bit easier to see, and I could show you what I'm doing is I'll have, let's see up here, where did it go? It's right up here. It goes right through, and that's a 14. And of course I put the jack handle on, and that will allow it just to give enough leverage to break it loose and take off the nut. All right, I got everything ready. I got the jack under the trans, got the engine hoist, got all chained up, and well, let's see if I can get it out. All right, well, there we go. That wasn't actually as difficult as I thought it was. And again, I mean, it's amazing. Just a handful of, you know, some 12s, some 14s, 17s, a couple wrenches, screwdrivers, PB blaster. I mean, you know, that's all it takes to get an engine out. Well, this is nasty and grimy. So now it's time to clean this all up and figure out what I'm going to do with that. Probably just going to sell it with everything. Well, it's getting real now. Well, as you can see, it's pretty easy to do it by yourself. You just need a little time. Take your time. Be a little bit careful not to, you know, be scratching, screwing up anything like that. But please, I got a whole bunch more. Like, comment, subscribe. Peace.